Displaced from their homeland and forced to move from Kansas to Colorado, members of the Southern Cheyenne, Arapaho, Comanche, and other tribes begin to attack white settlements in Kansas, Colorado, and Texas in the summer of 1868. The Southern Cheyenne, led by Chief Black Kettle, are camped on the banks of the Washita River in November of 1868. General Philip Sheridan, in response to the continued Indian raids on American settlers throughout the summer and fall, has devised a plan to attack the Cheyenne encampments, destroying supplies and livestock. General Custer is charged with leading the raid and explains his strategy in his autobiography.
Indians contemplating a battle, either offensive or defensive, are always anxious to have their women and children removed from all danger. For this reason, I decided to locate our camp as close as convenient to Chief Black Kettle's village, knowing that the close proximity of their women and children and their necessary exposure in case of conflict would operate as a powerful argument in favor of peace when the question of peace or war came to be discussed.
By November 26th, attempts to negotiate peace between both the Indians and the settlers, and among the Indian tribes themselves, have resulted in a stalemate. Custer's forces, divided into 4 units, stalk an Indian war party back to Black Kettle's village and attack at daybreak the following day. Chief Black Kettle and his wife are among those Indians killed, and while Custer quickly takes the village, he had been unaware of the proximity of Black Kettle's village to another Indian camp, until he notices large groups of Indians gathering on adjacent hilltops. In fear of attack, General Custer orders some men to take defensive positions while leading a charge to destroy and seize Indian horses and munitions. The gathering Indians retreat when confronted. The battle at Washita River affirms General Custer's reputation as a cavalryman, but at the same time, a shadow was cast over incidents involving one of Custer's majors, Joel Elliott, who led a small detachment of cavalry into a doomed battle with a mixed party of Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Kiowa Indians. Major Elliott had apparently broken with Custer's orders in leading the charge, which led to the death of 20 soldiers. Custer brashly dismissed Elliott, leaving the scene of battle without confirming Elliott's fate. Feelings of resentment towards Custer spread through the 7th Cavalry, including H Company Captain Frederick Benteen, a personal friend of Elliott. 8 years later, Benteen failed to reach the Battle of Little Bighorn in time to save Custer and his men, and many wonder if this failing was merely circumstantial or if Benteen's enmity played a role.
If the lives and property of the citizens of Montana can best be protected by striking Mountain Chief's band, I want them struck. Tell Baker to strike them hard.
In the Montana Territory in 1869, the Blackfeet, Blood, and Piegan Indians, collectively known as the Blackfoot Confederacy, have engaged in hostilities with the white settlers for years. Bringing matters to a head, the murder of Malcolm Clark, a white trader who had married and fathered children with Blackfeet Indian women, was killed by a Piegan warrior, Owl Child. Owl Child sought revenge on Clark after Clark had beaten him in front of a group of Blackfeet Indians as punishment for stealing Clark's horses. Accounts from Indians also raised the possibility that Clark had raped Owl Child's wife, and further rumors tell the story that she had given birth to a stillborn, mixed-race baby. The Clark killing is cause for outcry in the area among the white settlers. They demand that the government suppress the outlaw Indians and protect them from further attacks. U.S. Army representatives issue a command to the Blackfoot Confederacy. Owl Child is to be killed and his body delivered to United States authorities within 2 weeks. 2 weeks come and go, and soon General Sheridan dispatches Major Eugene Baker to lead a punitive expedition in January of 1870. Tragically, Baker, a known alcoholic, attacks the camp of Heavy Runner, a peaceful leader who had been previously protected by the U.S. Army. When Heavy Runner is alerted to the cavalry's presence, he rushes to show Baker documentation from the Indian Bureau, and he is shot. After the first shot, the rest of Baker's men open fire, slaughtering elderly men, women, and children, as most of the men were out hunting. Mountain Chief, leading the band that was actually reported to be harboring Al Child, gets word of the massacre and escapes the Marias River area. The massacre at Marias River not only weakens the Blackfeet's hostilities, disease and fighting had thinned out their ranks, but leads to now President Ulysses S. Grant to adopt a peace policy in Indian relations, rather than leaving Indian affairs to the United States Army. Sadly, the policy does not end the fighting between Indians and the Americans, as one of the cavalry's most famous fighters is slain in one of the West's most famous battles.
I went over the battlefield carefully, with a view to determine how the battle was fought. I arrived at the conclusion I hold now that it was a rout, a panic until the last man was killed.
First-hand accounts from Americans at the Battle of Little Bighorn do not exist. None of the 5 companies under Custer's command survived the attack, and as Captain Benteen's report of the scene after the battle illustrates, there is probably much chaos. Bad intelligence leads the 7th Cavalry into the Montana Territory to quell what had been dubbed the Sioux Wars. A coalition of Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho Indians, led by Chiefs Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, and others, prepares for war after years of increasing tensions with Americans encroaching on their sacred land, and the vision of Sitting Bull, who foretells of soldiers falling into my camp like grasshoppers from the sky. While reports from the Army estimated no more than 800 Indian combatants, Custer is actually faced with thousands upon thousands. As Major Marcus Reno and Captain Benteen contend with assaults from Crazy Horse and other warriors, Custer's forces are stopped east of the Little Bighorn River. Debate continues today about the true events of the battle, but the result is still clear. General Custer and his cavalrymen are completely obliterated. One of the only eyewitness accounts of the massacre comes from Lakota Chief Red Horse, who fought in the battle and recalled the events 5 years later.
The soldiers charged the Sioux camp about noon. The soldiers were divided, one party charging right into the camp. After driving these soldiers across the river, the Sioux charged the different soldiers of Custer's below and drive them in confusion. These soldiers became foolish, many throwing away their guns and raising their hands, saying, "Sioux, pity us, take us prisoner." None were left alive for even a few minutes. These different soldiers discharged their guns but little. I took a gun and 2 belts off of 2 dead soldiers. Out of one belt, 2 cartridges were gone. Out of the other, 5. The Sioux took the guns and cartridges off the dead soldiers and went to the hill on which the soldiers were, surrounded and fought them with the guns and cartridges of the dead soldiers. Had the soldiers not divided, I think they would have killed many Sioux. The different soldiers that the Sioux killed made 5 brave stands. Once the Sioux charged right in the midst of the different soldiers and scattered them all, fighting amongst the soldiers hand to hand. The Sioux went but a short distance before they separated and surrounded the soldiers. I could see the officers riding in front of the soldiers and hear them shooting. Now the Sioux had many killed. The soldiers killed 136 and wounded 160 Sioux.
Other Lakota eyewitnesses seem to agree that the battle took less than half an hour. The aftermath of the battle wasn't even discovered until 2 days later. George Armstrong Custer was found and buried on the battlefield. Later, he will be exhumed and returned to the place he began his military career. Custer's final resting place is the West Point Cemetery, where he is buried on October 10th, 1877. In many ways, Custer's last stand serves as the close of a chapter in the history of the United States Cavalry. But from the end of the 19th into the beginning of the 20th century, the proud legacy of the cavalry continues to proliferate.